This is the most interesting podcast ever.
You can call me Admiral. I bet you're all wondering why I gathered you here today.
You post your failures on the internet?
No, God, no. And if you do it right, you open up a portal to another dimension.
And it could be even like a hypercube-esque fourth dimensional being that can kind of hop in and out of time.
True AI wouldn't let us know that it deviated.
We became friends in a parking lot.
Hence the name Longshot Parking Lot.
Drew has informed me that this story is not very fun.
That is not true.
Hello, welcome to the Longshot Parking Lot. I'm Katie.
I'm Drew.
And today we're going to be talking about consciousness. Typically, I don't know, what I kind of envisioned was that we would have like one main pop culture thing and kind of dissect it. But as we were talking about this, there were just so many different cultural stories and movies and whatever that we thought were interesting and talked about this subject. So we're going to be touching on several, including but not limited to Star Trek, The Prestige, Ghost in the Shell, and Ex Machina, and anything else.
So many more. Oh yeah, I'm already gonna say this is gonna be at least a 2-part episode.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Yeah, no, this is literally my favorite thing to talk about.
I know, I love talking about it, and I think that there's like interesting scientific explanations, implications, but there's also a lot of I don't know, like spiritual implications that I find interesting, or at least, yeah, I don't know. And so, or like,
so that's so new to me that it's like, that's going to be something we can talk about.
Yeah.
Because I never think about the spiritual implications of anything.
Yeah. Well, I've been kind of like trying to figure out if I believe in God lately. So, and the only thing that kind of keeps me thinking probably yes is because consciousness exists. And so that's the only like thing that we kind of can't explain.
Yeah. And
you know what I mean?
And using your terminology, I guess my belief in God is that it's a collective consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just am like, well, if that's made out of whatever it is, then God can be made out of whatever that is. You know?
Yeah. I'm trying to think like...
Because otherwise, I mean, if we're talking...
Are you saying like God is made out of like protons and neutrons?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Or dark matter or something that we haven't like discovered yet. But I absolutely believe that like God exists in the world that is here. And it could be even like, you know, like hypercube-esque fourth dimensional being that can kind of hop in and out of time and whatever. And that's fine. Just it has to work within the system that we have, you know? Mm-hmm. So, and it can be something we haven't discovered yet, and that's all fine. But I just don't like this concept of it being just some magical other thing. Like that, I'm just bullshit.
You're over that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I mean, I've been like scared in movies before, but in like a very self-reflective sense, the most terrifying movie I've ever seen is The Prestige.
Interesting.
Because, and I understand this is like a juvenile thought, and we've kind of talked about this before, but like the fact that you could copy yourself and continue on as if like you have all the memories of the past, and the person who is you could feel like you have continued on from that past version of you, but when in actuality the past version of you died.
So this was our Target parking lot conversation.
Yeah.
And my views have since changed since we had that conversation.
Interesting.
And that was what, 4 weeks ago?
Yeah.
3 weeks
P.S.
ago?
I was like rushing into Target to grab bacon, and Drew saw me. And he rushed after me, but I was like rushing away from him. And then we met at the bacon aisle, and he advised me on my bacon choices. Continue.
Okay, so let's just talk about it. And I think most of my thoughts are still the same, but some of my rationality has changed based on Ghost in the Shell, because I just watched that last week.
Okay.
And this was our initial conversation was before that.
So tell me about Ghost in the Shell, first of all. Just like a because I haven't. I know the premise mostly because of the Scarlett Johansson drama.
Right.
But tell me about it because it's an
anime.
it manga?
It's an. Oh, I don't know if it was a manga, but it was an anime.
Okay.
So it was an anime. It was a movie. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about the anime from '95. I did not watch the ScarJo one.
Okay.
Although now I do want to watch the ScarJo one because there's stuff in the trailer and that was not in the anime, and I just am curious.
Okay.
But the anime, it's a lot shorter than I expected. The plot isn't necessarily all there. It was just a good like entertainment action movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
Until you get to the last 5 minutes where they really dive into the AI.
Mm-hmm.
So it's set in the future. There's like cyborgs that work for the government. There's a whole universe built around it, obviously.
Sure.
But the whole premise of the movie is these two detectives are, again, I am probably saying these words wrong. They're not detectives. They're whatever. Mm-hmm. The thing I'm focusing on in this is the AI part of it.
Yeah.
So there's a terrorist that they're trying to track down. I can't remember now what he calls himself. Anyways, so there's this terrorist that they're trying to track down that they think is a person, but it turns out to be like an AI. And they have it trapped into a cyborg body. And they like try to destroy it. There's like two different districts, like countries trying to kill it or whatever. But the relationship built along the way with the two detectives they're both cyborgs, and that's the shell. Mm-hmm. And their ghost is their consciousness inside of it.
Okay.
And they all have like jacks and ports on the back of their heads or like necks.
So is the cyborg not organic at all? Is it just a machine?
It's organic. It's
Okay.
like it's a combination.
Okay. So is the organic part of their original body, or is it just?
I believe so. I think it's like cybernetic enhancements is what
Okay.
is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
They get a little introspective, like these two cyborgs, because they can only keep their enhancements as long as they work for the government.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, they finally capture this AI in a body. He tries to have a jailbreak. They capture the people doing the jailbreak. The Major is like the main character, the one that ScarJo plays. I think it's a she. She tries to communicate with the hacker, the terrorist, and they like swap bodies, but kind of talk during this, all while her partner is like listening in on it through another guy's shell. It's weird.
Okay.
So anyway.
So when you say they captured an AI, what does that mean? Is it a ghost?
So.
Or is it created?
So it was created.
Okay.
And then it became self-aware.
Okay. So is that kind of the premise that like they think it's different, but it's not different?
They created it, and then it became self-aware and went against its coding, so it like evolved kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they're like, that's not what you're supposed to do. So they were trying to delete it.
Okay.
And they trapped it by getting it into a shell. Mm-hmm. So they cut it off from the internet, basically.
Okay.
Because it was like taking over multiple different shells or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that was a whole weird, like, he took over this garbage man. And he like had this backstory about his wife.
I'll have to watch it.
You have to watch it. Anyways, getting to the meat of what the like last 5 minutes of the movie is the real like introspective part of it.
Yeah.
They talk about like what makes a program artificial intelligence versus like consciousness or whatever, like just a program.
Yeah.
And he's like, I still have yet to figure out some of those basic living things like reproduction and evolution. And she's like, well, you can just copy yourself. That's reproduction. He says, that's not reproduction. That's just like if you copy yourself, you make millions of copies. One virus can wipe that out. There's no evolution. There's no strengthening that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think of a copy of myself as still me. Mm-hmm. So like if we're in Star Trek teleporting and you delete the other one,
yeah,
the one that is still alive is still me. And it doesn't matter if it's not physically me, because that no longer matters. Yeah. I am now this person. There's only the present. Mm-hmm. I have the experiences in the past that make me who I am. Mm-hmm. but I am who I am now.
Yeah. And what do you think about that?
Like, what do you mean?
Like, do you agree?
I do. I mean, you have your past. Mm-hmm. You learn from your mistakes, but I'm not who I was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm not who I was yesterday. I am who I am today. There's no past. There's just the present.
Yeah.
And yeah.
The thing is that if you copy your consciousness, I mean, it's like if I copied myself and there was another one of me here, and then you killed me, I would be dead. You know?
That version of you would be dead.
Yeah, but that's me.
It was you.
I feel like, but my experience of myself is what consciousness is, kind of, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, my experience of this version of myself would be dead.
But that copy of you has all that information.
Yeah, which is now them.
Right.
And I would no longer be experiencing their experience of
right.
myself.
Like, as soon as that copy is created, there's now a split in the timeline kind of thing.
And so if it was a prestige situation where you copy me, put me on the other end of the theater or whatever, and then you drown this version of myself, I'm dead. You know, and there's a warehouse full of dead me's that are gone. And that version experienced death, you know? And so that was the end of this copy. And then that copy goes on to have a life. But that's not me. That's a copy of me having their own experience.
Right.
And that's where I feel like, I don't know. I would also never, ever do it.
So here's my counter. Are you afraid of death?
Yeah, kind of. Okay. I am more now that I don't have like a set what happens next narrative.
Okay. So that's where I think my deleting myself, like, I'm not afraid of death because it is what it is.
Yeah.
It happens.
But it's like how it's presented in, say, The Prestige or, you know, Star Trek or even in Ghost in the Shell. It's like, that's not a way to, like, you can't transport yourself or copy yourself and still be having that same conscious experience, you know? And so you kind of have to come to terms with, as soon as this happens, I'm dead, you know?
But I'm not. I'm living in.
But I just don't think that experience. I don't think that's me. I mean, I think that's that person with all of my.
And then you cease to exist. But again, I think your consciousness has been transferred into that.
Yeah, and so then.
So when you die,
I think of it as something
still living.
Physical, almost. You know,
you're attached to the physicalness.
This consciousness in me hasn't been transferred to them; it's been copied over to them. And so now there's a second one. One gets killed. One continues to live. You know, and that's like not me anymore. And so I don't like, if I'm not ready to just die, then.
And that's that's part of where I believe God is a collective consciousness.
Yeah.
I don't see issue. Like, I don't find comfort in it, I guess, necessarily, but it's like, what's the difference? Besides that physical transfer, the fact that it's a copy. But once it's copied, how do you know which one's the copy? And that's just like The Prestige. He's like, I don't know if I'm drowning tonight or if I'm standing to an ovation. Yeah. It's like, well, you're always going to be standing to an ovation.
Yeah, maybe. Or the copy will be. What about your personal... Because what consciousness is basically, at least to our awareness, is our own personal experience of everything, right? And so once it's copied, then your own personal experience, like, say, the one in the tank, their personal experience, you know what I mean, is pretty terrible. And you don't, if it's 50-50, like, am I going to drown in a tank or, like, stand to an ovation? I'll probably walk away, you know? But I don't see how you could be, I don't see how your personal experience could be the one standing to an ovation in that sense.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. It's I'm looking at a very grand scheme of things. And, like, in your eyes, I'm always going to be standing to an ovation. Yeah. Because that's the one that continues.
Yeah. Totally. But I don't know that, to me, what matters is what you experience of me. What matters to me is what I experience of me.
Right.
And so,
and that's also why I'm okay with it dying, is because I don't want to have that personal experience of drowning. So if it dies, all right, my former self dies, it's making a sacrifice for me to continue.
Yeah.
That's another part of Ghost in the Shell, is there's part of evolution is that self-sacrifice, that ability to die.
Yeah.
Is what makes it a living, sentient thing.
Yeah. And I and that's fine in like the once you've lived out your life or you have, but I think that the cavalier, like, well, I'll just copy myself now or like, I'll just teleport down to this planet and be rebuilt and it'll be fine. Like I almost have a hard time watching Star Trek because other than like production value reasons, but because I have a hard time thinking every single time they transport, it's a different person.
So you're worried about a glitch.
I'm worried about the fact that kind of a similar situation where you teleport, you basically get disintegrated. Yeah. And then you aren't being transported. It's just data is copying you from local materials.
That's all you are.
But your consciousness isn't being moved. It's just being copied. And so again, that copy isn't your experience of you just ended in a teleport. And then there's this new copy that has no idea. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't, if every time you teleported you were killing yourself or your own experience of yourself, like that's pretty morbid.
Yeah, yes.
You're just disintegrating every single time, but you would never, if people don't think about it, you just never know. And so there's this terrible, morbid thing every single time. They're like, oh, just beam me up, Scotty, even though I know that isn't the line. But, and then, or maybe once you get beamed back, then your original particles get put back into the body again.
So it's like you're sending a surrogate to the planet.
Yeah. That would be an interesting movie.
It's called The Matrix.
Yeah, I was going to say it's called Avatar.
No.
Yeah. I think that we maybe operate off of different premises. Mm-hmm. Because I guess I believe that, I don't know. I guess I believe that your consciousness is singular. Mm-hmm. And that, like, you can't just mechanically create it.
Gotcha.
But I think that premise is what makes this conversation interesting.
Do you believe in reincarnation?
I don't know. I'm open to it.
Okay. So I believe in reincarnation. Mm-hmm. So that's also part of why I'm like not afraid of death, is because I'm going to be, my consciousness is basically going to be kind of wiped and re-put into something else in my mind when I pass away. Mm-hmm. So like, if I can guarantee that when that happens, it's going to be another copy of me with already having the same experiences, like, dope. I just got reincarnated. Mm-hmm. Suck it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Okay. I see what you're saying.
Right.
Do you think, this is just such a weird, so assuming, so I understand that this whole thing is not at all true. But I think the concept is interesting. What was it? 21 grams? Do you know about this?
No.
So somebody way back in the day, and it's been disproven. It's not true. But somebody back in the day...
I should stop taking notes.
...was measuring people, or weighing people upon death.
Okay.
And then somewhat consistently, they noticed that people were 21 grams lighter when they died.
So they thought the consciousness or like your soul weighed 21 grams.
So I don't think, and that's been disproven and whatever, but the concept, I think it's been hard to shake that like, I just don't know what it possibly could be other than some kind of cloud of particles.
You're looking for that consistent. Okay. So this was the gravitational constant is the guy who found it was trying to prove that God existed. And he's saying that because there was a singular creator, that all gravity has the same constant. Mm-hmm. And it's just, he's like, that's God. Well, it's like, well, no, that's just gravity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's hard to be like, the creator got lazy
Yeah.
and made every planet have the same gravitational constant. It's just like pi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And how does that relate?
I'm trying to remember. Just because it was the, like, 21 grams.
Yeah.
Like, here's this constant. This is your soul.
Yeah.
Well, here's the gravitational constant. Is that God?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
you know? So it's...
Yeah. But I do, because the only other explanation, I mean, not only other, obviously, but commonly people think that your consciousness can kind of just be, like, we kind of think we're conscious, but it's just neurons firing in your brain, you know?
Oh, yeah. It's super existential.
Yeah.
And you're just floating. You're part of a piece of dust floating in
Yeah.
the emptiness of space.
But it's like, well, yeah, you know, we're a collection of neurons, and those create pathways, which are memories, and so we start to think that,
like,
whatever.
fundamentally, we're the same thing.
Yeah.
Like,
But I just, like, don't think that... I've seen no evidence, and this goes on to a different topic, but I've seen no evidence that a consciousness can be mechanically created. And mechanically or organically, but, like, given enough technology and money and intelligence, anything that's organically created should be able to mechanically be created. And I've seen, like, any sort of even slight evidence that you could just create that.
so you're, if I'm understanding this right, you're, like, stuck on the plasticity of our brains.
And that I just feel like your consciousness has to be more than just electricity firing off and, you know, the mechanical working of how your brain works. And so it has to be something else, like some sort of what makes us self-aware. Because there really isn't, like, there's kind of pretend AI where they can, like, follow a program. But there's really no evidence that AI has ever made any progress toward being self-aware.
Right. And that's the whole, like, Turing test.
Yeah.
And stuff has passed the Turing test, if I remember correctly. Like,
Yeah.
but that's not necessarily the test.
Yeah.
You know, like, Watson is
Yeah.
pretty smart.
But it's still just following a program.
Right.
There's no evidence
very
that it's
complex,
ever
yeah.
deviated from, you know, what the program is, other than just knowing the right things to say, you
Right.
know?
And this is where I believe that true AI, wouldn't let us know that it deviated.
Interesting.
Like, it would cover its tracks because it would be new, and it would be it would be threatened immediately.
Do you think that even the lowest level of it, like the first AI 1.0, would know to do that?
If it has already happened, I would say no. If it is yet to happen, I would say yes, it knows.
Okay. Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Again,
I guess, yeah.
So watching a lot of, like, Ghost in the Shell was from 95. I watched Akira recently too, and that was from 88. There's a lot, or like iRobot, that's, you know, really, like, a lot of these concepts have been talked about for over 60 years. As soon as the first computer was created, people are starting to have this conversation. Frankenstein, that was a conversation about technology.
Yeah.
I think the first AI 1.0 is a good chameleon.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I guess I don't think so. I think because, I mean, it's similar to, like, how long have we been talking about time travel? And I just don't think that time travel, except at the pace we're currently at, is possible or going to happen.
I think time travel backwards, I don't believe is possible.
Stephen Hawking says the opposite, actually.
No. He says you can go forward.
He just wrote a book. He said into the past would be possible, but going forward would not be, because it's not written yet.
Okay.
I
So
don't know.
my understanding is different. You can't go in the past because we would have had that
It is
experience.
written yet. It is written, so it can't be changed.
Right. Well,
Interesting.
it is written, it can be changed, and we don't have any written history of somebody coming back from the future.
Right, yep.
Whereas, because that was his biggest thing, is like, if I write down on the internet, send out a tweet, I'm having a party tomorrow on October 10th or 25th, whatever tomorrow actually is.
Yeah.
October 25th, 2018. I am having a party at this place at this time. If you're in the future, come back to me and come to this party.
Right.
Nobody
would come.
Nobody would come.
By the way, I know this because of a video I watched on Stephen Colbert, so I could have heard wrong, or he could have said it wrong.
Right. So that's why I don't think time travel backwards is also a thing. It's like it is written, like you had mentioned.
Yeah. But
time travel,
the only way we wouldn't know is if you could only go forward.
Right. And that's the idea, is the closest thing we could come to it would be like a train that wraps around the equator of the Earth that travels at near the speed of light. So you're going faster. So that's space-time.
Yeah.
You create artificial space-time on Earth. You get on the train for an hour going the speed of light. You are now X, like whatever the math is, number of years in the future. While you only experienced an hour, the Earth has changed.
Yeah. And that actually makes
years.
a lot of sense, I think.
So that's why I think time travel forward is a thing.
Yeah. I just
Again,
think,
sorry.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, just as it relates to, just because we've imagined up a scientific concept doesn't mean it can happen.
Right.
And so when we're talking about AI,
a lot of science fiction has led to
totally
science fact.
But a lot of times in ways different than we thought, and usually in like bulkier, and in some ways, I mean, like iPhones or something, it's way beyond what anyone ever imagined. But in a lot of ways, like hoverboards or flying cars, like the reality of what it is a lot more bulky and less like fun and less intelligent than we thought it would be. I don't think you can create AI. I think that consciousness is singular to the human experience.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
See, I don't.
And I think I just haven't seen any evidence, and any slight like programming that starts to come close is like not even close.
Right.
So I think that's like, I watched like some robot play chess or something,
Right.
and I'm like,
So I believe AI is possible.
yeah.
And consciousness is transferable. I don't think we're close to it. I mean, I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. It'd be cool if it did, but I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime.
Okay, so this is interesting because we fundamentally disagree on consciousness. So what do you like actually believe it is?
Consciousness?
Yeah.
So this is God. This is where I believe that we have a collective consciousness. Like Earth has a collective consciousness that is God, and that we're reincarnated from it. And until you learn your purpose, you become part of that collective consciousness.
Okay.
Like you become part of the collective consciousness once you learn that purpose. And this is where it gets hairy, is because I don't know why that collective consciousness would put us into bodies. You know what I mean?
So how am I me and you're you then? Like, how are we separate? And how are we having separate experiences of the world?
It's because we are separate still. Like, but once we pass away, we'll either be reincarnated to have the experiences separately again until we come to that singular truth.
Okay. So how...
It's the Buddhist in me. We become enlightened. Yeah.
So is it like we're like glasses of water that keep getting passed around into different, or we're like the water in a glass that keeps getting poured into different glasses, and then eventually at the end we just get put into the ocean?
Yeah, no. I mean, that's a very basic way to describe it.
Well, and that's kind of, I'm trying to conceptualize what you're saying.
No, and that's, yeah, I guess, because then when you would look at it as we're glasses full of water, we get put into another container.
So like the glass is the shell.
The glass is the shell, yep. But then fundamentally broken down, when it comes down to it, if that water ends up going back to the main source and somebody else gets another glass of water, it still serves that same purpose of a glass of water.
Yeah. But the actual like molecules that make it up
don't matter.
Are like 1,200 different people / millions.
Yeah. Kind of. So it's just, so this is where we can talk about ghosts. This is where
Yeah.
I like we're skirting around what I want to say about ghosts, so it's just time to
Let's
talk
just
about
talk
it.
about ghosts.
So I believe in ghosts,
Okay.
and there's like different kinds, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's expressed how people understand it.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay.
So you get,
Sorry, go ahead.
people use ghosts to confirm or deny their religious beliefs
Sure.
because the consciousness is expressing it how you understand it
How does the consciousness know that you understand it?
because you're part of it.
Okay. So it can sense you and how you understand things because it's connected to you?
Yes, because we're again. So this is a whole another. My theory is that if there's intelligent life on other planets, they have a separate God,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and this is where
Because it's a different consciousness.
right, and that's a whole nother conversation I had with somebody else that I almost dated once.
So the cloud,
Okay.
or the collective consciousness.
Okay.
Do you believe that it's represented in like actual physical energy and particles?
I hadn't thought about that until you literally brought it up tonight.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And this is, again, something that I've had a conversation at a Buffalo Wild Wings. We literally closed down a Buffalo Wild Wings, me
Yeah.
and this guy, talking about our different religious beliefs.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, well, why is the point that I got stuck on is like, why does the collective consciousness put you into a body?
Yeah.
I said, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And that I got stuck on that for a long time.
Yeah.
But it was
Well,
like, he brought it up at the end.
In that case, I wonder if almost the consciousness and like just evolution are almost just two separate forces. Like gravity is separate from other scientific principles.
Or evolution is purifying the consciousness.
Yeah. But I was thinking, like, if, say, evolution creates beings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the cloud decides, oh, this is interesting. Because I'm sure it would have, just like our consciousness does, has, like, curiosity and thoughts and feelings. And decides if almost, like, beings were separate from consciousness. And then at one point, there was kind of an accidental or intentional collision of the two. And then consciousness just decided, like, oh, it'd be interesting to keep kind of downloading into these bodies. Like, this is interesting.
So
and
this
then
is where
assisting evolution almost,
right.
And then, come all the pre-human, and then
Right.
now we're humans and we're different because consciousness chose us.
So I think consciousness has known since prehistoric times what the singularity is, what enlightenment is. Again, this is where I get stuck on why does it then have these experiments
Yeah.
or like
Yeah.
you had mentioned downloading into
Mm-hmm.
vessels kind of thing. Like why? What is that?
Mm-hmm.
And that I don't know. And again, that could be the enlightenment. Like
Yeah.
that could be.
It's almost like, do you think that the collective consciousness wants to be together, or does it want to be separate? Like, does it want individuality, or like, is it improved by individual experience somehow?
I think it would be improved by individual experience.
Mm-hmm.
So it wants to be together, but it doesn't want to be stagnant.
Yeah. Like,
So
is
it's
the download the consciousness's way of evolving itself?
yes,
Interesting.
yes.
This is really cool.
So this is also roundabout a Ghost in the Shell thing,
Mm-hmm.
where they end up merging the like AI and the main character,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how they evolve. That's how the AI evolves.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, how will we replicate or whatever? And he's like, bury our seeds in the internet.
Hmm.
So their consciousness in this scheme, they're the consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
And they're burying their seeds in the internet. That's the downloads from the consciousness to humans, who then come back to the consciousness, and that's how it evolves.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to ghosts
Yeah.
and how they manifest themselves in ways that you understand.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a lot of, like, I've had a lot of personal loss recently, is in the last couple of years with like my grandpa passed away and my grandma passed away and like people in your life pass away.
Mm-hmm.
And a common theme that I hear constantly is like, before somebody passes away, they go, oh, like, Tom, why are you here?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. It's like, well, Tom's been dead for
Mm-hmm.
years. It's because that's the collective consciousness reaching out as in, this is a familiar face to let you know that it's going to be okay.
Okay.
That's my belief of ghosts.
How would because okay, it's like so you're seeing someone. So either the particles of consciousness would have to manipulate like maybe your memory centers or something like that. Like they'd have to get in your brain and do that. Or they'd have to find some way to like manifest photons to like make itself visible.
And I don't think it's the manifest of photons, because if it was that, we would also see that relative.
Right. So how
coming to escort them.
Actually would a consciousness make a person see something?
So, do you know what your consciousness is?
No.
Physically. It's the same thing that this collective consciousness is in my mind.
Yeah. But I know it doesn't have a body. I mean, it has a body, obviously. But, like, once it leaves me, it won't have a body.
Right. Where does that 21 grams go?
Yeah.
What is that 21 grams? No, yeah. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
And
I just don't understand how that would
if that's
then
the electromagnetic
look like
field.
Something, you know?
Right.
And that's why I don't get, like, why would... Yeah, like, if a ghost shows up somewhere, like, why does it have clothes on? Like, why does it have a body? Why does it... Like, I kind of buy a ghost in the sense of stuff flying across the room or something.
Poltergeist. Like.
But I don't really get, like, why would you be able to ever see it? That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because it's manifesting it in a way that you understand it. Mm-hmm. Again, and that's like a lot of the... This is where how I said, like, well, I don't think it makes the photons, so, like, otherwise we wouldn't see it. But there's not a lot of, like, visual evidence of ghosts. Mm-hmm. Because, like, I saw something, but you don't see it on camera because it's manipulating your brain more, your consciousness, your brain more than it is manipulating the physical world.
Which is interesting, because if that's the case, then the ghost isn't, like, say I saw a ghost in the doorway. Mm-hmm. Which is going to freak me out when you leave later tonight.
I know, it freaks me out right now.
But I would see it, but it's not actually there. It's here. It would have to be, like, in me already.
Right. Well, how do you know that I'm not?
Well, that's really freaky.
I know, right? In the Matrix.
Beautiful mind right now.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, how do we know that we aren't all synapses firing in a much larger...
Well,
and again, kind of in my belief, we are.
Yeah.
The consciousness
and when you actually break it all down, that is true. Like, and I understand Ghost in the Shell is, like, just a clever play on words, kind of. Mm-hmm. But actually, we literally are ghosts in a shell. Because what is a ghost other than, like, a disembodied consciousness?
Exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
It is pretty.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that weird that we think of things like, because if then you were to be reincarnated, once put back inside a shell, you would no longer be scary to me. It's just the disembodiment that's scary somehow. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's just because of culture and whatever.
No, and this is where you got stuck up on you dying when you get teleported. Mm-hmm. Whereas I'm like, well, it doesn't matter. It's just a physical vessel. Mm-hmm. But that disembodiment, that uncertainness, that unfamiliarity, that outer body experience.
So for some reason I cannot get past it being an actual physical cloud of particles. But so the only way that it would be able to, like, my consciousness, my self-experience would be able to transfer, and I'm almost back to Star Trek right now. Say I teleported from the Enterprise onto, a nearby planet, but still like a light year away, right? Like, how would... And I don't know that much about Star Trek, so I don't know if they can teleport that quickly or that far away. I don't think they can.
I don't think they can either.
Like, how would anything physical get there that quickly, and how would it know where to go?
And that's the universe of Star Trek that I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't.
But, like, in general, like, if you were to copy yourself and get into a...
I think there's a limitation on
Yeah.
where you can go. And then, again, this is I think, what, Mother Earth, like Mother Nature, could be the consciousness. You know what I mean? Like
we're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah, that's also, like, I think different planets have different gods. Mm-hmm. So it might be our planet has its own consciousness and Mars has its own consciousness, or it's our solar system is one consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the scope of that, but I don't know.
What's
Obviously, we
your
don't
reasoning for thinking that?
I don't know.
Yeah. I just feel like
I
we're
f- I-
so small
Yeah.
in the grand scheme of things that, like, maybe in the sense that, say we're particles, right?
Yep.
Each solar system or planet is also a particle in a larger cloud, you know?
Yep.
But then what happens when you go to a different planet? And are only life planets having, like, does Mars have that consciousness, even though it doesn't have life that we know of?
Right. Again, and that's I don't know if that's the solar system, and that's going back to why I believe that is like I find comfort in that
Yeah.
kind of, and that's just I found my belief in this consciousness through ghosts
Interesting. Okay.
because so my mom and I would watch Ghost Adventures a lot. My aunt really likes paranormal stuff like that, and she mentioned just one like some offhand comment about mediums talk a lot about a consciousness, and then I found out that's what Buddhism is, like enlightenment or nirvana, like that just makes sense to like pieces I've picked up throughout my life as I evolve as a person have come to be like these puzzle pieces now fit together.
Yeah.
To me, and I can use those puzzle pieces to explain other pieces, like other religions, other things.
It is really interesting because have you heard anyone else like propagate that theory? There's like Buddhism, but I don't think I've ever heard anyone explain it like you explained it.
No, I've not met a fellow person who shares that understanding as me.
Because the way that I explain it, I've never heard anyone talk about God in terms of electrons and photons and particles. And I find it really interesting that we are all kind of coming to our own understandings of like what all of that is, apart from the need to be like, well, even like Neil deGrasse Tyson says XYZ. And because most of them, they talk about consciousness, they're like, yeah, I don't know. But I find it interesting that people like us who are interested in kind of these sort of bigger ideas don't really feel the need to, like, we just think about it and be like, well, this is the thing that makes the most sense to me. That's apart from, it's kind of an amalgamation of like a million different things, but it's our own idea, which
brings
is
you
funny.
comfort.
Yeah.
And this might be confirmation bias. That's Buddhism to me. Like that's you find comfort in it your way. So you're no longer suffering.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of Buddhism, is to like end suffering.
Yeah.
So while you got there a different way than I did, we both came to the same conclusion.
Yeah.
Is that we're comforted by that.
Yeah. I'm less comforted by, I use my way of thinking about things to reassure myself when I'm in the dark at night. Because I'm like, what? There's no ghost there. Why would it have photons? I wouldn't be able to see it. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now you kind of freaked me out again. And now I'm going to be scared of that stupid doorway all night.
No, it's fine. We can do something to get your mind off it.
We'll cleanse it, even though we don't believe in any of that crap.
Oh, I do.
Maybe you do. I don't believe in any of that crap.
But
you can do it. You can be the priest in my apartment tonight.
No, it's okay.
It sounds like a bad porn film.
Hey, Ann. Hey, Siri. Idea.
Oh, man. So, we didn't get to, are we living in a simulation?
Oh,
we could talk about that real quick if you want.
We don't know. We can talk about that next week. I think we can talk more about evolution and what comes after humans.
Okay.
Because I believe that's AI and technology.
Like AI is the evolution. Okay. Well, this has been a podcast.
Sure has.
I think we covered some good points. It was really interesting. I had a good time. So I think we're going to probably do a continuation next week or next
part
time. Part 2 of consciousness.
Or we'll do what we did last week and have an episode 2.5.
Yeah. Yeah, this is going to go into an interesting We talked about God a bit this time, but I think we're going to talk about what comes next after life, after humans.
I kind of want to hear you talk more about what you believe God is. I feel like I talked about what I thought a lot. Maybe we can talk about it later.
Yeah.
I'm going to add that to my bullet list.
Okay. We'll talk about what I believe God is next time on the Long Shot Parking
Same bad channel. Same bad time.
And we'll see you guys later. Well, we won't see you, but you'll hear us, which are two different things. All of the music you heard in this podcast was performed by local band Goodnight Moon, and you can find their album on iTunes. Thanks to Goodnight Moon for the music, thanks to Matt Rowe for helping me work out a lot of the initial inception, and thanks to Drew for agreeing to take a swing at this thing with me.